Today on Locked On Canadiens, which one of you injured Michael Pezzetta?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. For those of you who listen to us every day, we want to thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day. My name is Laura Sab, also known as The Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. And Ian, there have been some mysterious and not so mysterious injuries throughout the Canadiens organization that we're hearing about today.
Yeah, you know, for the peek behind the curtain, sometimes we don't tell each other what we're gonna say right off the rip. That tickled me a lot, because then my immediate thought was, no one's gonna be able to answer, because if somebody injured Michael Pezzetta and they were just a normal person like me or you, they're no longer with us. They are deceased. Michael Pezzetta saw the red mist, and that was the end of that.
So he was injured, though. Like, this is the thing. Like, he went on break, like all the Canadiens did, and he came back, and all of a sudden, he's no good?
Yeah, I don't know how that can happen. I don't know. I would understand, like, if he went away and came back and he was sick, right? Because, okay, it's that time of year, you ran into somebody at the airport who had the flu, and now you have the flu, right? But you can't catch a sprained wrist or whatever it is that's bothering him. We don't know yet. The Canadiens said they announced Michael Pezzetta is out with a lower body injury and was being evaluated on a day-to-day basis.
Maybe he got stung by like a stingray or something.
Yeah, he got a jellyfish up his arm swimming, in very blue water somewhere off the coast of somewhere. Yeah, I genuinely curious. I'm usually like, let the injury stuff go. Like, we don't need to pry. I'm kind of curious what Michael Pezzetta was up to where he hurt something. Did he step on a shell? Like, is that what happened? I've done that before. That's not fun. Just for the record, I was day to day for quite some time with shell in my foot, so it could have happened.
But that's the thing, because like I usually when it's the bye week or the All-Star break or whatever, I'll like stalk them to see where they're going. Sometimes I get vacation ideas from them. Brendan Gallagher and his wife are really good for those. But I didn't this time, right? We were busy, we were tired, and so I don't know what he was up to. If you guys were stalking him on Instagram, let me know. Like, where did he go? I'm legitimately curious as to, he got injured. And this is the thing. It's like, now is the time, because Emil Heineman is almost ready to come back. Well, he skated with the team, which is another update that we're going to talk about. So like, Michael Pezzetta, if you're going to play, now is the time. Like, this is a very unfortunate time to get injured.
Slight correction there. Emil Heineman did not skate he skated on his own away from the team, which he has been doing. So like, no setback there. But this is about the time where you'd think he would come back, right? Yeah. Like, this is in the range that the Canadiens gave when he got hit by a car. Again, like, what? We don't know how Michael Pezzetta got hurt on the beach. Emil Heineman can't cross the street in Utah. Like, none of this this is like, we talked about in seasons past, and thankfully the Canadiens have been, knock on wood, pretty healthy this year. This is like 2 years ago Canadian stuff, right? Where like Kirby Dach gets trench foot and we don't know what's going on there. He has a lower body injury that turns into an illness that turns into an injury again. This is time travel stuff that we're seeing in just this last like couple months for the Canadiens. It's just like, oh yeah, that's peak Montreal injury stuff.
It's all, and so like just really quickly, we do want to talk about RHP. Thank you to the Toronto Marlies. I thought he might get a shot. Apparently not. He's also now out. The Laval Rocket are still managing to win despite key injuries out of their lineup.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they decide to do with Owen Beck when the time comes for him to potentially come back to Montreal, because I think where he ends up will tell you a lot about what the Canadiens are valuing more at this point. If they call up Owen Beck and that leaves Laval shorthanded, well, that means that they more so value Owen Beck's development as an NHL player, less so as just a professional. If they keep him in Laval, I think it means that they want Laval to keep being super competitive and be ready for the playoffs when they hit. He'll be there, assuming he's not injured as well when the playoffs hit, because, Montreal's not going to be in the playoffs, and Owen Beck is going to have a coming out party in that playoff for Laval. So, I think it'll be really telling to see what ends up happening, especially if Pizzetta's out, for a significant amount of time, or we just find out whatever happens to Pizzetta. RHP is out for any length of time and he can't play. But also, Josh Anderson, he's still playing, but he spent the last 2 weeks off, and he took a therapy day again on the first practice out of the Four Nations break, which is, we kind of thought that maybe he'd be able to rest up, but I was concerned before. Now it is worried. There's an injury concern meter. Concern is like on the lower end, and worry would be this guy's dealing with something that is really bad.
We need a concern meter overlay.
Well, like perfectly healthy would be like Nick Suzuki, who never misses any games, to like who would be the other end of that? Who's
the most injury prone Montreal Canadian? I don't want to be mean and say Kirby Dach.
Yeah,
it's Kirby Dach.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of somebody who, like, if you have an answer to this, put it in the comments. Let us know who you think over the course of your time watching this team. Doesn't have to be this season. Who just doesn't get hurt, or who gets hurt all the time. Is like, you ever see that video?
Pascal Leclerc of this team?
Yeah, I was gonna say, who's the Scott Sterling of the team? That video of the guy just getting peppered with the soccer ball. Like that's the guy we're looking for here. Yes. But yeah, I'm like, Anderson has been playing well despite the injuries. I would be really curious to see what this version of Josh Anderson looks like completely healthy. Because I feel like that we're all being denied of that, us as fans and him as a player.
So here, like, I have two theories about this, right? Like, one of my theories is that, like, being hurt is actually his superpower. Like, he's only capable of playing like this because he's hurt. Yeah. So, like, him limiting himself is actually kind of like corralling some sort of talent into, like, the right places. Right. And then my other theory is that he keeps taking therapy days and saying that he's not 100%. Because he doesn't want to get traded off of this team because he likes the vibes. So he doesn't want any teams looking at him. And if I were another team being like, oh, you know what? I need a Josh Anderson. And then I see that he's just been taking therapy days for the last 4 months, basically. I would just be like, maybe I don't need Josh Anderson. Maybe I'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, or maybe I can wait till this summer and get him for next year, and he'll have a clean bill of health and not, show up with his arm dangling off of his body. Yeah. Like, that's an injury we don't know anything about.
Yeah, it's because he's not missing games, right? So it's not like he's out or day to day with upper body or lower body. We can't even narrow down the part of the body it's on.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd be shocked if it's just one injury. Like the amount of it, just every time he comes back to the bench, he looks like he's been through just complete torture. And and it's a real testament to like the fortitude that he plays with, because he's still every shift is going still 100% all the time. I cannot believe that this is the Josh Anderson. This is the same player that we saw last year.
Yeah,
who just like he seemed lost. He seemed like he didn't have a purpose. And like on this team, he very clearly has a purpose and a very defined role, and he's very good at it.
Yeah.
I think even if he is banged up, I think any team would, at this point, I think he's tradable. I think somebody would want Josh Anderson should they have a need for that kind of power forward. And especially with the cap going up, like that salary is not going to be as big of a deal next year.
He doesn't want to go, though, I don't think.
No, he's got limited trade protection. I think it's like 5 or 6 teams he can block a trade to. And usually when it's 5 or 6 teams, it's the rest of Canada. So the US, have your shot. That's your guy, Josh Anderson. Go get him.
That's really funny, though. I never thought of it that way.
That's absolutely what it is. And it stinks. It stinks for the sport that like you can just have a no Canada trade clause. That's not fair.
I mean, sometimes I get it, just because being away, and also like anyone who lived through like, the lockdowns and all of that. Also, there's higher taxes here than most places. I totally understand, like for like financial reasons or family reasons or whatever, but it still hurts my feelings.
Yeah, for sure.
But this is the thing, right? So just one last point on the Owen Beck thing. Sorry, we went all the way to Josh Anderson. The Laval Rocket thing. I think there is a lot of value in having long playoff runs. I think because the thing is, like, you look at the Marlies and how good they were. You can't really translate that to the Toronto team because the Toronto team had flaws. Like every year that those guys that were so good on the Marlies like were on the Toronto team, they were missing defense, they were missing goaltending, right? Like so, like we make a lot of jokes about that. So like the big focus needs to be like, yes, they do need that playoff experience, particularly in Laval, particularly playing that grind and all of that. But I also think that you have to do everything you can to make sure your lineup is as deep as possible. And that is the last note I will have on the Canadiens practice updates. And then, there are 26 games left in the season. We're going to talk about what it looks like for Hutson and Caufield, who are closing in on, or maybe getting close to some really fun stats. And then an outlook for Nick Suzuki. That's coming up later in the show. We'll talk about Lane Hutson and Cole Caufield in just a moment. Looking for a snack that's both nutritious and delicious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk or on a road trip or I just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. I really love that, when you're having that 3 p.m. crash at work, you could just pull out some pistachios. They're so delicious. There's so many wonderful flavors and they're so easy, grab and go. They've got all 9 essential amino acids. They're good for you. They bring you up during your day and it's just so good. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, let's talk about Lane Hutson and Cole Caufield. Which one do we want to do first? Okay, so the whole premise of this segment is there's 26 games left in the season. Cole Caufield is within reach of 40 goals in the season, and Lane Hutson is within reach. A little bit of a stretch there, but maybe he can do it. My co-host is convinced he can. Of closing in on Chris Chelios' record for the most points by a rookie defenseman in the Habs history.
Nailed it. Totally. Let's start with Caufield because I feel like this one we've been sitting on for longer.
Yeah.
But as far as, his journey to the NHL, and we've all kind of pegged him as the next 40 goal scorer for the Montreal Canadiens, something they have not had since the 90s. And he's cool. He cooled off a bit for a little while. He started the season red hot. And then some guy named Patrick Laine showed up and the power play just completely went to Patrick Laine. And think about it, right? Like Laine has what, 11 to 13, somewhere in there of power play goals.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see, actually. He's got 12 total goals. I think 2 of them one was on the 5-on-5, one was in overtime. So let's say 10 power play goals for Patrick Laine. If 8 of those go to Caufield, we're not having this conversation. He's going to get it. Right. If 5 of them go to Caufield, we feel more confident that, hey, he's gonna hit 40.
Right.
And that's
so
not
wait,
to say
let's
that
recap because
sure.
With 56 games played, he has 26 goals, so he's 14 away.
Right. Which doesn't seem like much, but like you said, 56 games in. I'm no math guy, but that's a little less than 30 games to go. He's gonna need to play at nearly, a goal every other game for the rest of the way just to hit it. And if he doesn't, if he misses or slips up there, he won't hit it. Now, the good thing is Caufield scores in bunches, right? So he doesn't need to get them every other game. He can have one with 2, he can have a hat trick and then go cold for a game or 2 and then be able to pick it up again. I say he does it. I think we finally have that 40 goal scorer in Cole Caufield. I think that he's going to come back from this break re-energized and realize I need to shoot the puck more. And that'll solve his scoring issues. What do you think?
Well, I like that you said that, he realized that he needs to shoot the puck more because in that stretch after their good run, right? Like when they were slowly slipping out of that in the mix era, we were constantly asking ourselves, why did he make that decision there to pass, right? Mm-hmm. and he would be passing to the wrong person, and then the puck would go to the other team. So for me, I think that just like remembering what he brings to the table is important. There are 26 games. So I thought there were 28 because I'm also very bad at math. There are 26 games left. So initially I was like, oh, he just needs to score one every other, or like, just a half.
He has to be
half
better than that.
game. Yeah. He needs to
Yeah.
be slightly better than that. Which, you know what, he's capable of doing. So, and this is a thing too, like if he starts getting close, his teammates are going to start feeding him. Marty's going to keep playing him more minutes, things like that. So I think that he's hurt by the power play, which is not able to get anything going. It feels like it went from like Cole Caufield to then Patrick Laine to then neither. So they need to kind of figure that out and make some changes there. And I also think that Nick Suzuki needs to be better. We'll talk about that in our next segment. And I think, we talked about putting Patrick Laine up on that top line there. Maybe they try that. Maybe something happens. And so I do think that it's within reach. And I think that Cole Caufield is the kind of player that if he's determined and it starts getting closer, if it starts, if he realizes it's a possibility and he really internalizes it, I think he'll be able to make it happen.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say on Caufield here is Laine related. That last game for Finland, we saw Laine basically lead the charge offensively. He didn't leave the ice for nearly the last 6 minutes of that game.
Yeah.
And we noticed that, yes, he's shooting it from that circle, but the goal, he made 2 pass attempts essentially. And one of them went right to the slot, which is where Caufield has been playing in those situations. I think Granlund's a lefty, so it was an easier shot, but Caufield's still going to be available in situations like that. He might need to turn his body a little bit to receive that pass. But like, if you're looking for something to take away from that tournament, from Patrick Laine's game that could translate to the Canadiens, I think Cole Caufield being a benefactor in that specific scenario could be something we're looking at, when they start back up on Saturday.
I absolutely agree with you there. All right, let's talk about Lane Hutson. A little bit of a taller order, but I feel like a more determined player.
Yeah, and a shorter player at that. So yeah, Lane Hutson's at 41 points through 56 games. I also just want to say Lane Hutson is third on the Montreal Canadiens in points. Third. He's 20 years old, and he is 11 points clear of the guy in fourth.
Is the guy in fourth Slavkovsky?
It's Uri Slavkovsky. He's at 30, and behind him is Jake Evans. So not super great depth scoring for the Montreal Canadiens at this point, but we sort of expected that. He needs to get 264 to tie Chris Chelios' record for points by a rookie defenseman for the Montreal Canadiens, and he'll need to get 65, obviously, to pass that. So we're looking at, 23 points to tie in the remaining 26 games? That's nearly a point per game. Yeah. That's a really tough one. But if he pulls it off, he will have absolutely earned it with a run like that.
Yeah.
No one will be questioning like, oh, he's just, he's picking up random secondary assists. No, you don't pull off something like that if that's not, what you're able to do. And also, if he goes on that kind of run to finish the season, the Calder is much closer than folks are maybe thinking right now. I think Celebrini wins it right now. Mm-hmm. But
be careful. Everyone's going to call you a traitor for doing that.
Whatever. I said it a while ago. I don't really care about the Calder so much as I want this record for him. This record was always more achievable because you don't have to rely on
other
newspaper writers. Yeah. Who watched Lane Hutson play once and decided he's only worthy of a 5th place vote. Like that's the kind of stuff we're going to be dealing with at the end of the year. So don't worry.
Yeah.
I think he can do it. Does he do it? Probably not, but I think he can.
I think it's possible, but here's the other thing too, is that even if he ties it, he becomes one of the 2 record holders, right?
Yeah.
How many years are we going to go before seeing another one of those, right?
Yeah.
A rookie defenseman in Montreal scoring that many points. I don't know. I feel like maybe like someone just needs to whisper it to him because Lane Hutson, if he puts his mind to it, he's going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think. Look, people have been betting against Lane Hutson his entire life. I wouldn't start doing that now. I think, and look, from a fan perspective, it's going to be really fun to watch the rest of the way. Watching him try to chase down that record, watching Caufield try to get to 40. Like, look, I understand people are frustrated with how the last little while has gone. There's still stuff to watch for. Those are 2 really compelling storylines for the Montreal Canadiens. And so is the guy we're going to talk about in the 3rd segment, because we're still hoping that he pulls something out to finish the season. But I think these are two of the most compelling storylines we've had in quite some time for the Montreal Canadiens.
Yes. And I want to just argue that, both of them are somewhat, obviously Caulfield more, contingent on Nick Suzuki's performance for the rest of the year, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to talk about right up next. All right, let's talk about Nick Suzuki. We're going to come right out and say it. He needs to be better than he was in the last 10 to 15 games that we saw him play. I don't think that Nick Suzuki would deny that. I think he is the type of person to come right out and say that and be accountable for it. I hope that the break has done him some good. I also hope that watching the tournament has lit a fire under his butt, right? We made fun of Hockey Canada so much for not bringing him because he didn't go to Worlds. We called it petty. We called it, and I do think it's petty. And so, there's very rare exceptions where you can force their hand. And I think Nick Suzuki has the opportunity to force their hand because the Olympics are coming up. We know he's going to be on the short list for an invite on the long list, not the short list, the long list for an invite to Hockey Canada's camp for the Olympics, right? Like he was there last time around. He got a call, right? So before they decided that they weren't going, or I can't remember what happened.
It was the pandemic and they pulled out. They pulled out of the NHL pulled their players
because of the insurance. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
They were planning to go. Cause I remember he did get a call and he was very modest about it. And then Eric Engels told the world. So, I think that, yes, he's going to have the opportunity to go to Worlds this year because the Canadiens are not going to be in the playoffs. But beyond that, you kind of have to force their hand no matter what, right?
Yeah, totally. And look, we talked about it towards the end of the stretch of games that led us to the Four Nations face-off. He had 1 point in his last 6 games. That's that's not going to help this team when your first line center and basically the engine of your offense cannot produce. And it's not going to help Nick's case to determine if he can be a point per game player, because as of right now, he's fallen to 52 points in 56 games. That's under a point per game. He's going to have to make up some time. He's going to have to play a little out of his mind and hope that the regression swings back the other way. People hear the word regression. You're regressing to the mean, right? So if right now he's swinging well below that pendulum's going to swing back the other way. That's the idea behind regressing to the mean. So I think he needs to come back. And there's not a guy on this team, I think, other than like Josh Anderson, who's so obviously playing hurt. There isn't a guy on this team that I think needed this break more than Nick Suzuki, because when does he get one? He's always the guy that goes to the All-Star game. He doesn't miss a game. He's an ideal Montreal Canadiens captain because he's always there. And I think mid-season, he's not getting this break. There's the bye weeks that they usually have, which I think those are going to go away now because we're just doing these international tournaments all the time now. So I wouldn't imagine we've got bye weeks very much going forward. But he just never gets a break. And I think I would like to see him come back and prove that was the case, that he was just he was gassed. He needed some time to just relax. And he goes out there and he shows us that he can be that, at least 82 point player. We talked about potentially hitting 90. I think that's kind of out the window at this point. Like he's like that would be, he would need 34 points in the remaining games to hit 90. That's not happening. No, that's insane.
No. And I agree with you on that. I did really want him to hit 90 points this particular year. But I think there's another kind of wrench that we haven't talked about is what happens if they trade Yoel Armia and Jake Evans. Is he going to need to start playing on the penalty kill?
Yeah.
Or are they going to replace those two people with someone else? And like David Savard too, but theoretically you would replace David Savard with like a defenseman.
Yeah, you can't if you make Nick play defense, it's you're gonna just the wheels are gonna fall off. Like that's it. And I think that was part of the calculus this season for the Canadiens was we're gonna take away a lot of this penalty killing time from Suzuki, not because he can't handle it, he very obviously can, but because we need him to do other stuff.
Yes.
We need to free him up so that he's not completely exhausted by the end of the game when we potentially need to get back in the game. We're tied and we need somebody to set up the winning goal. But yeah, I agree with you. Like that's a concern to his offensive production, honestly, is if he
has to play that many minutes.
If he needs to play that, and especially minutes where he's not going to score a lot, right? He's not, especially the two guys who score shorthanded in this scenario, they're getting traded.
Yeah.
So like you're putting Nick Suzuki out there with like Josh Anderson. Maybe he can spring Josh Anderson on some breakaways, but like that's not, he's not getting a ton of points or generating a lot of offense off of those scenarios. So, we talked about Caufield and Hutson. I kind of think that their chases are a little bit more realistic than Suzuki hitting a point per game this year. And I don't know why I think that. I think it's just we talked about the expectation and the responsibility that Suzuki has. Like Hutson doesn't penalty kill. Caufield doesn't penalty kill. Those are offensively minded guys.
Yeah.
If Suzuki has to be pulled away from that's sort of what you're looking at.
Right. And I think that's an extremely, extremely valid point. But I also think that, Nick Suzuki, the reason that we have less faith in it is just because he is the one that they send the best defensive lines and best defensive pairings out against, right?
Yeah.
That's who, like, he's always wearing two other players from the opposing team. So yes, it's true they cover the other guys, blah, blah, blah. But Nick Suzuki is the one they have to shut down so that he can't get anyone else going. So I think that's probably why. Whereas like the other two are kind of squirmy and wily and can kind of get out of it, right? And just like imagine them coming out of a penalty box, for example. Let's say they take a too many men penalty,
Yeah, exactly. And look, every time I like this season, especially whenever I've posted or thought mid game Suzuki's having a quiet game, he just says shut up and he goes out there and he does something incredible. Yes. So I hope that by my doubting his ability to get there, he puts up 50 points in the rest of the season somehow. And he makes me look like an idiot. That would be I would Nick, I would hate that so much. I'd hate that if you went out and scored that many points. I'd be so mad. Just go do it, man. Just go out there and play. Enjoy the rest of the season. Try to build some chemistry with your teammates and try to, set them up for the next season, right? Leave this season with a good taste in your mouth for next year. Yeah. That to me is like, those are the goals for the rest of this year, which is unfortunate, but it's, the hand we were dealt.
Give us a fun 26 games.
Yeah. I can't believe we're already done.
We're not done yet.
No, I know.
There's still like months to go. We have to cover a trade deadline.
That's true. But just the number of games, I'm always like, man, that's really all that's left. Like,
I know.
You get to like January and there's 30 games left. You're like, well, no, that's not fair. There's so much time left.
It's mean.
Yeah.
All right, let's do our trivia and then we can get out of here.
All right. Yesterday's question: the last 5 players to wear the number 35 for the Montreal Canadiens have all been goalies. Who was the last skater to wear that number? Laura, do you have the answer?
I have the answer because I stole it from our listeners, specifically Manny. The answer is Thomas Plekanec.
Thomas Plekanec, correct. He wore the number 35 from 2004 to 2007. And we talked about this off camera, I had originally thought that he couldn't wear the number 14 because Radek Bonk was there. Radek Bonk wasn't there when Thomas Plekanec first started. I believe the number 14 was vacant. So my brain just like made that connection.
Shut up.
Yeah, it made it up. On that one, we, of course, Good Sport first, as he often is, followed by Green Ice 46 and Manny. So thanks for answering that question, you guys. Today's question, we're going way back in history for this one. The first NHL shutout in Canadiens history came on January 2nd, 1918, in a 1-0 win over the Montreal Wanderers. Laura, do you know why that game is significant?
Is it the first? No, I don't know.
It was the game that the Montreal Wanderers, they forfeited that game because their building burned down on January 2nd, 1918. So the first official shutout for the Montreal Canadiens came in a game that didn't exist.
They never played it.
They never played it. So their first real shutout with a goalie in net happened about a month later. Who was in net for that shutout for the Montreal Canadiens? So if you have the answer to that one, put it in the comments down below. I just really wanted to point out that the first ever NHL shutout for the Montreal Canadiens was a forfeit of all things.
It was a fake game.
The real one came, I believe, against Toronto. If you have the goalie who had that shutout, put it down in the comments. We'll shout you out on the next episode.
If I remember correctly, that the place where the Montreal Wanderers are supposed to work, or like the place that burned down, is now a YMCA, if I'm not mistaken.
Lovely. Yeah, the Montreal Arena.
Yes.
I thought it was Jubilee Arena. It wasn't. It was Montreal Arena.
I have to fact check that. Like nobody take my word for it, but I'm pretty sure I read somewhere like some big thing is coming up. All right. We want to thank all of you for listening to us today, and please subscribe, please tell your friends, please like, engage, correct us on some of our takes if you would like. You can find us all over social media. We're at Locked On Canadiens on TikTok, on Instagram, on Blue Sky, at Gmail. You can find me at The Active Stick. You can find my co-host at Maybe It's Ian. Do not forget that we have a mailbag episode at the end of this week. Please send us mailbag questions for it. I want to thank everyone for listening, and we will see you all tomorrow.